The Christmas pudding is in decline. In a recent survey, less than half the population said they included one on their Yuletide table, and that figure hides a significant age bias. The younger you are, the less you fancy a bit of pudding. How has this dish, once emblematic of Britishness, come to such a sorry state? What we call Christmas pudding has its roots in the medieval period, when a rich concoction called plum pottage became associated with winter feasting. Pottage was just a name for a soupy stew, and this one contained beef, spice and dried fruit. When a pudding version appeared sometime around the end of the Tudor era, the two coexisted happily for many decades. Plum pudding was similar in style, but with no actual meat, just lots of beef suet, and was thickened with breadcrumbs and flour with added eggs until the mixture was thick enough to be put in a wetted, floured cloth and boiled. The resulting speckled brown cannonball-shaped pudding wasn't sophisticated, but was delicious. It tumbled rapidly into recipe books, with as many variants as there were writers. It was part of the main meal, sometimes eaten before the meats, but more often with them, and it quickly became seen as the ideal accompaniment to roast beef, a bit like modern chutney. Beef and plum pudding became the English dishes of the 18th century. The plum pudding was eaten widely across the winter, though it was hardly a dish for the poor with all its spice and expensive imported fruit. It could be made in advance, though was more often prepared when needed, and it would keep for months, making it ideal as a gift. However, as the 19th century wore on, it became increasingly associated with feasting, in particular at Christmas. Because it was eaten with beef, and beef was so ubiquitous on the Christmas table, the plum pudding itself came to be seen as a particularly Christmassy food, and was even served when no beef was in the offing. In 1845, Eliza Acton became the first person to publish a recipe for it called Christmas pudding, and it slowly slunk to later in the meal. It also got gradually sweeter and squishier, for it was now often moulded in an ornate copper mould for the tables of the rich, or a simple bowl for those of lesser means. Habits changed, and the 20th century left the plum pudding behind, though as Christmas pudding it survived. No longer eaten as part of the main meal, it was now a sweet, and served increasingly with accompaniments deemed fitting for its new definition, cream or custard or brandy butter. The tradition of setting it on fire was a Victorian one, but in the 1920s it garnered more mythology, such as the taking rather seriously of the old Victorian joke that the pudding should be made on Stir-Up Sunday, the 5th Sunday before Christmas. A sixpence was sometimes added to the mixture as well, a pale shadow of another festive tradition, this time related to the ancestor of the Christmas cake, Twelfth cake, which had tokens concealed in it to be found amongst much revelry. Today, our Christmas dinner has swollen to such proportions that a hefty pudding with a rich sauce can sometimes seem too much to handle. Perhaps this year we should go back to basics. Beef with gravy and a slice of plum pudding, anyone?